Very good. Let me show you a few pictures from Mexico. This is a town that has a volcano nearby, and the volcano came and destroyed the whole town. You can go and visit this. It's a very, very beautiful place. Mexico is very fertile, so lots of things are cultivated in Mexico. This is a lavender field. And this is a special geological phenomena called the cenote. So basically you have an underwater river which dissolves the calcium-rich material, and it's very transparent but very cold. In the north part of Mexico, there's lots of deserts. This is some of those deserts. It rains very little in the northern part of Mexico. And this is the famous resort town, Cabo San Lucas. Look at this one. This is hot springs. You can sit down there in the hot springs and enjoy the beautiful view there from the valley. And this is close to where I grew up. Notice that it is very dry, isn't it? And there's not too many trees where I grew up. It rains only 20 days in the whole year. Okay? So that's why not too much trees and things. Look at this beach. It's called the Hidden Beach. And you can see it here from above. So only a few people at a time, they allow them to enter that beach. The Hidden Beach. And this is where I grew up. Notice there's not too many trees. There's a few of them, but not too many. And mostly cactus is what you see, plenty of those there. These are the biggest crystals in the world. There was a mine, and as they remove the water, these huge crystals form. It's extremely hot. You cannot be there more than 10-15 minutes or you will pass out because so hot that is down there. And from this plant they made a very dangerous poison by the name of tequila. Avoid it. It's not good for you. Now before it's tequila is agave nectar. That one is good, excellent sweetener with lower glycemic index. And this is the tallest mountain in Mexico, 5.6 kilometers. Australia wishes he had that mountain. Not too many mountains here in Australia. And you can literally walk this mountain. There's pathways to walk it all the way to the very top. I have a friend of mine, he did it. Look at this algae, how it makes this change in the color of the water. And that's why the color becomes this pink color. And there's some forest there in the center of Mexico. And this is an oasis town. So you can see it's a desert around, and then suddenly there's a source of water which makes everything nice and green. Lots of Canadians and Americans move there to retire because the weather there is just nice the year round. It's not cold, it's not hot. It's like 23 degrees year round. And this is a fascinating thing when the monarch butterflies from Canada and America, they migrate down to some forest in Mexico, and you can go there in the winter and just see thousands and thousands of butterflies there just waiting for the summer to come back, and then they'll fly back. Now, do you think the brain of the butterfly is smart enough to arrive from Canada to Mexico? You need somebody smarter than the butterfly, isn't it, to guide it. So, yeah, you can see there, how Providence is how they end up these butterflies down there. There's still a few active volcanoes. This is one of them. It's not active all the time, but it's often sending smoke, and once in a while it does throw a little bit of lava. And this is a mountain that is close to Mexico City. Many times as you're flying into Mexico City, you can see this. And let's see if you can say the name of the volcano. Popocatépetl. Popocatépetl. It means the mountain that smoke in the Nahuatl language. Or you can call it the short name is the Popo. That's much easier, isn't it? The Popo. So I'm going to be citing some of my research. You find my research there on that ResearchGate page, as well as I'll be citing a few of my tweets. You can also find that there. And there's that YouTube page, as well as that Instagram page. So you can continue and do follow-up on the different topics that we are talking about. So let's talk about freedom. You know, this is something that the person that is facing an addiction wishes to experience. Because of the addiction, the person can lose their freedom. For example, is as an octopus. The octopus is going to come to you and tell you, hey, grab my hand, you know, you're free to do it, you know, it's no problem. So then it gives you one of those tentacles, and before you know it, you have 8 tentacles around you. That is exactly how addictions start. Just a little tryout of the behavior or the substance, and very soon, you know, you have those 8 tentacles around you. It's like the story I was reading recently. This couple, how he started getting involved in alcohol. Very soon, it started to get off control. He would drink, and even like that, would go to work. And one time, they decided to drive to Las Vegas in Nevada, and he had just too many drinks. So they had an accident. His wife was flown out of the car. And this was in the middle of the night. There was no car whatsoever. And he thinks it was an angel. Suddenly he found somebody that was able to, that came out of nowhere, was able to make the right phone calls so that the emergency vehicles would come. She was very severely injured by the car accident. And that's what started waking him up, that he needed to stop that addiction. And through different processes, he was able to remake his life. And sometimes it takes a traumatic experience like that, isn't it, to give that wake-up call. Today, they're happily married, and no more alcohol in that household. So, in order to make changes in our lives, we need to go through 4 steps, according to the professor from Harvard, Dr. Prochaska. And those 4 stages of change are the following. First, unconsciously incompetent, which basically means you need to change, but you don't know you need to change, and you're not changing. Okay? That's basically the very first step in the process of making these changes. Like I was listening to a lecture recently. This lady was telling her story how she got addicted with Coca-Cola. She had a tremendous addiction for Coca-Cola. And she describes her addiction to the point that she just didn't drink water, period. You know, it was just Coca-Cola that she was consuming. And then you go to step number 2, consciously incompetent, which basically means that now you know you should change, but you're not changing. So this person describes how she came to a lecture just like this and became aware that Coca-Cola is not the best drink for you. Then she went into step number 2. Now she was conscious that she needed to change, even though she was not changing. And then you go into the battle stage, which is step number 3, consciously competent. It means you want to change and you are changing, but it's not something that happened naturally. So she describes, as she was going through that battle to stop that Coca-Cola, how every time she was thirsty, she would think about what? Coca-Cola. And consciously say, no, Coca-Cola, no. I want water. So it was a battle in her mind. It was not something natural that would happen. She needed to say no to the Coca-Cola and choose the water. But then, as you practice step number 3, then you're going to go to step number 4, unconsciously competent. And she describes her transition to the step number 4. She says that she was suddenly, after a few days, suddenly her desire for the Coca-Cola started to go away. And now, naturally, she started choosing that water. To the point that today she even finds it, not even nice, the taste of Coca-Cola. That's how much the transition has taken place. Because she arrived at the unconsciously competent. Now you do the new behavior without even thinking about it. It's just part of you as you are becoming changed as a result of the changes you're making. Proverbs 5 describes the battle of the person with the addictions. In his own iniquities entrap the wicked, and he is caught in the cords of his sin. And again, this is that octopus, isn't it? He's telling you, look, just grab one of those little arms, and nothing is going to happen to you. That's what you think. But before you're thinking, you have those cords that are taking you sometimes in directions that you don't want to go. Among other addictions include sugar, chocolate, overeating, television, sports, rock music, pornography, gambling, masturbation, and so forth. And some of the characteristics of addictions are you want to continue using them. If you stop after a few days, that desire comes. 2, it's not enough the initial dose. You need a bigger dose to get the same effect. And this is what happens, that when the first time you used it, you had tremendous levels of dopamine in your brain. And you want to re-experience that pleasure that you receive. So that's why you go back to it, and you're going to realize that the same dose doesn't cut it. You need something a little bit stronger in order to experience the same level of pleasure. Another one of the characteristics is that there is dependence. You're using it, and you stop using it, And then you get these feelings and so forth about it that are drawing you towards it. And those withdrawal symptoms are not the nicest thing, especially, the stronger the addiction, the more you're going to feel those withdrawal symptoms. And number 4, there is a high possibility you're going to go and fall back over and over again. And then as the addiction is taking place, you will see that the behaviors deteriorate, and there is an effect on the person, on the people around them, and on society. That is exactly the problem with addictions. So 15 million people abuse heroin, morphine, and opium. 13 million people abuse cocaine. 150 million people use cannabis at least once a year. And another huge problem is the cigarette addictions. And I go to many places where I'm just driving around and I'm seeing, everybody with that addiction, 1.3 billion tobacco smokers. Cigarettes came from Cuba. When the Spanish came to Cuba for the first time, it was in the night, and they saw that these people had something red in their mouths. They couldn't figure out what it was. And when they got closer, they saw how these indigenous people from Cuba would get the tobacco leaves, they would dry them, and then turn them on, and that's how they used to smoke back then. The Spanish tried them, and they liked it, and that's how this thing ended up in Europe, and then from there it went all over the world. And drug abuse causes tremendous amounts of loss of healthy life and costing a lot of money. Among the almost 2 million admissions for drug treatment in the U.S., 56% are multiple addictions. And that's the issue, that many times one addiction is going to call another one and so forth. So the most abused drug in the world happens to be alcohol. And the issue is that many of your politicians and our politicians in America love this drug. And that's why they're not in a big haste to do something about it. Because they will be shooting themselves, isn't it, in the foot. Marijuana is second, following by cocaine, and then the opiates, the heroines and the morphines and the so forth. And other drugs, 26%. Sadly, these drugs start to influence a lot of the behaviors in the adolescent community. And this is very sad. In the US, 53% of the 12th graders have used an addiction drug at least once in their lifetime. And marijuana is the most commonly used illicit drug. So the brain is a monitoring system that God gave us. And we are facing a new epidemic of addictions, and these addictions have to do with media. So due to the nature of our brain always is drawn into things that are new, intriguing, and striking. So if you think about it, that cell phone that you have in your pocket, it has every single one of those characteristics. In fact, these cell phones are drawn to so that our attention can go and be focused in there. And because the cell phone is such a powerful device, it produces super normal stimulus. It just hijacks our attention, and we are unable, to move away from it unless we consciously do so. So you have the mailbox there, you have the newspaper, you have the television, you have the radio, you have a photo album, you have a public library, you have a scandalous party, all of it in one beautiful, powerful device that fits in your pocket. No wonder why it's hard to get your mind out of this. In 2015, a survey was showing that more than half of the iPhone users say that they couldn't imagine life without the device. So this is the issue. You go to places like high schools and so forth. Here you have this group of young people, all of them on their cell phone. Have you seen that? They don't talk to each other, Everybody is there glued to their device. That is not normal. And as the brain starts to grow dependent on technology, your intellect starts to weaken. So just by the fact that you're feeling the vibration or hearing the ping, ping, if you're doing something, boom, your attention immediately there. Yes or no? And it takes you off your concentration, line. It's difficult to do your job like that because it takes time again for your attention to reactivate. So this starts to affect your reasoning and your performance. So studies show that when you're doing a job, if you get distracted by that ping or that vibration in your phone, your work becomes sloppier. Even if you don't even check your phone, just the fact that you just heard it, then your mind, starts going in that direction. Oh, I wonder if my girlfriend wrote me, and then, I was waiting for this, and your mind gets off task. So if you are not able to answer it, research show even your blood pressure spikes, your pulse starts to quicken, and your ability to solve problems decline. There's a very interesting study from the University of California in San Diego. 220 undergraduate students, they gave them 2 standard tests of intellectual acuity. One was to measure the available cognitive capacity. In other words, how much of your mind you can put in a particular task. Then there was a second test. This one was measuring fluid intelligence. How good you are to interpret and solve something that you're not familiar. And the only variable in this experiment was where these people were and how close their cell phone was to them. So some students were asked to just put their cell phone in front of their desk. Some put their cell phone on their pocket or backpack. And others, they told them to put their cell phone in another room. What was the results? The subjects that the cell phone were on view, they could see their cell phone even though they were not using it. As long as they were seeing that cell phone, when they applied both tests, the numbers were the worst. Well, those that left that cell phone as far away as possible in the other room, their intelligence actually increased. And the students that had the cell phone in their pockets, it was not in front of them, but at the same time it was not in another room, were kind of in the middle. So as the cell phone got closer to them, their brain power became diminished. Interesting, isn't it? And then after they started interviewing these students, the students were denying that this had any effect in them, you know. And they were not realizing how much their focus and their thinking was being hijacked by that device. So just the fact that the cell phone is there, our minds become weaker. And the reason why is because we know we don't need to put too much effort in our brain. This device is going to solve it. I'm just going to ask the chat GPT, you know, it'll answer my question, you know. I'll put it on Google and Google is going to give me the answer. So we don't make an effort to use our brain, and that weakens our brain potential. So Dr. Ward, the one involved in the research, they wrote that the integration of smartphones into daily life appears to cause a brain drain that can diminish such vital mental skills as learning, logical reasoning, abstract thought, problem solving, and creativity. And if you came last Saturday, we were talking about the frontal lobes, for those that came, exactly where the cell phone is decreasing our brain power. Using devices normally significantly reduces your brain capacity to process information. According to a study from the University of London, multitasking actually reduces your IQ, with multitasking men dropping an average of 15 points, effectively giving them the same cognitive capacity as an 8-year-old child. And that's the thing. You are not like the computer chips. They design those chips to be able to change tasks as Siemens without no problem. You're not one of those. Your brain is not made like that. You cannot be saying, oh, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to check that, I'm going to check my message, and then I'm going to do this. You cannot. When you do that, your intelligence starts going down. Another person that has helped us to understand quite a bit of the function of the brain is Dr. Daniel Amen. That's his last name, Amen. And he uses this special device to try to map the areas of the brain and their functionality. They're not doing an anatomical image, but they are checking the function of that brain. Here's a normal brain. Notice how the colors are uniform and so forth. Here's a normal brain. And here is somebody that uses marijuana 4 times a week. Notice the suppression there of the frontal lobe of the brain. And the thing is that heavy marijuana usage decreases the activity of the brain, and most worrisome, it decreases the activity of the frontal lobes of the brain. In the marijuana brain, what happened is that marijuana constricts the blood vessels in your brain. And remember, we were talking about this last Saturday. The most sensitive area of your brain happens to be your frontal lobe. So the first thing that gets affected by different toxic substances is going to be your frontal lobe. So as those blood vessels constrict, you get less blood flow, less oxygen, and things just don't work properly. Apart from the fact that not only affects your brain, it also affects your heart, your lungs, your immune system. And there are 400 carcinogens in the smoke marijuana. It's going to affect your memory and your learning. It's going to distort your perception. That's why today we're seeing an increase of car accidents caused by marijuana. Blunts the judgment, interferes with motor skills, and lessens motivation and cuts down on alertness. So here it is, somebody using that marijuana for 10 years on the weekend. Same story with the alcohol. Notice the tremendous negative effect at the level of the brain. And this is what the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine in England says. Bogus studies claim people should drink to protect their heart. Although ethanol offers some protection from bad cholesterol, this is done at the risk of brain impairment. The benefits of alcohol are small and ill understood. And the recommendation to be a light drinker is not only meaningless, but also what? Irresponsible. So the issue is that how can you as a doctor prescribe this to your patients? You are increasing the risk of cancer, you are affecting their brain functioning and so forth. It is a very irresponsible thing, says the Journal of the Society of Medicine. And that's the thing, alcohol is the most dangerous drug in our society today. Did you know that half of the crimes that occur under the influence of alcohol? In other words, if there was no alcohol, you could literally cut by half the amounts of rapes, of robberies, of car accidents, and all kinds of things secondary to the use of alcohol. And sadly, many young people are starting to drink quite early, and that translates into accidents, crime, sexually transmitted diseases, teenage pregnancies, and so forth, as the person is not thinking properly when they are taking these decisions. And then also cocaine, and not the best thing for your brain. Here it is, somebody using heroin for 25 years. You can see the effect at the level of the brain. And another study that can give us information about the function and addictions in the brain is something called the SPECT scan. And the SPECT scan can help us see, for example, somebody that is addicted to gambling. The patterns of the brain start to change. And you can see here the limbic system. For those that came last Saturday, we're talking about this limbic system last Saturday. How is the antagonistic part of the frontal lobe becomes extremely strengthened while the frontal lobe starts to weaken. And here you can see, that overactive limbic system on the gambler. Nicotine user, you can see the stroke that it caused on the frontal lobe, and that is going to be a permanent type of damage. And sadly, we're seeing an increase of smoking. 1/3 of the students in America say that they had at least one time used cigarette smoking. And the problem is that it damages the DNA in your lungs, opening the door for a future cancer in the near future. And the thing is that they even add other chemicals to those cigarettes to make them even more addictive. So it's quite the battle to stop that. So if the parents smoke, more risk that those children are going to follow that. And then the gateway experience for risky behavior. Some kids, because it's fun, they are driving in a car when somebody already has had some alcohol usage, more likely to be carrying weapons, and even more likely to commit suicide and so forth. In the second part, we'll be talking about that more. So is it really cool to smoke? Not necessarily, isn't it? It's not cool to have cancer of your lungs. And caffeine, another very common addiction, the pick me up but let me down. And caffeine starts to constrict the blood vessels of your brain. You find caffeine in coffee, in both black tea and green tea, some sodas, some cold remedies, and it has psychological effects. So then you have this yo-yo, anxiety nerves, depression, mood swings as you use them. You can find this video there on my YouTube page. This reporter, ABC News, a mainline television station in America, the reporter takes a functional MRI. She drinks 1 cup of coffee and then repeats the same study. This is her brain before the caffeine. Notice the redness all over. That means good blood flow. That's the way that I want to see a brain. This is after 1 cup of coffee. 44% decrease in blood flow to the brain. Is that good? No, you increase your risk of dementia and other problems as you are decreasing the blood flow. You increase the risk of depression. With depression, we want to increase blood flow to the brain. That's why it's not the best thing to do. This is my study. In my study, we were documenting how caffeine users tend to have higher ultra-sensitive C-reactive protein. What does this measure? Inflammation. So when we measure inflammation, higher inflammation on the caffeine drinker, as well as lower vitamin B12, which can be dangerous because low vitamin B12 can literally damage your nervous system. Amphetamines, methamphetamines, ecstasies, the pleasure now, but pay later. Sadly, many young people addicted to these party drugs. And the issue is that this drug addiction impairs the frontal lobe. You start losing volume of your frontal lobe. And as you damage the frontal lobe, your weak becomes more weak and so forth. So we need to work on making our young people more resilient. And here you can see an integrative way of dealing with addictions. It is always better to use love as a motivator rather than fear. Because you get scared, but then once the scare off passes, then you're going to go back to it. But rather, we want that love to be the primary motive why you are trying to overcome that addiction. And for that, I need that command center, that frontal lobe, in the best shape possible. So you want to have joy of service, forgiveness, trust, and a internal transformation. And then you want to have an integrative lifestyle that includes nutrition, exercise, water, sunlight, freedom, air, rest, and the good support around you. Because relationships is what help us motivate and move forward. So we need appreciation, we need family time, we need communication, we need to face sometimes certain crises, we need to solve our conflicts, we need to have close ties and relationships as we go through life, so we need that social support. And this has a synergetic effect. The more of these elements you have present, the better the impact that it will have. So as you can see, it is possible to overcome these addictions as we deal with the root cause of the problem. This message has a second part. It's going to be tomorrow, the second part, so don't miss tomorrow's, where we'll continue to dwell with the more details about how to overcome these addictions. So let's go ahead and have a 10-minute break, and we'll come back for the next lecture about suicides.